I'm gonna start like right now. Greetings and welcome back once again. That's babies talking to me. How do we be like? I'm gonna start right now. How about it? I'm gonna start right now. Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Amuna Yisrael Solonomics 101 Left Project combination. I'm trying to get back into the groove of things, and then there's all these stories popping up. And I'm like, man, the last time I was here, we read the second installment of the Haitian or IT's uh, Constitution of 1805. And I said I was going to read some short things in between before we go back into the bigger things, right? So bless up, welcome, and greetings to those who just joined us. You haven't missed anything because I just started. This is our piece for today, by the way. If you don't know, I've taken a little downtime, been crocheting it out. And so if you're wondering why there's a dolly mannequin behind me, I'm doing a little sharing because, you know what I'm saying? If you don't know, then how you going to support? So definitely for those who have supported, we do have books on sale. Angry Black Woman Syndrome we visited, as well as My Brother, My Keeper, as well as Bar Midbar Project, and coming very soon, Solonomics 101. I know I've been saying that for a while. I had to let My Brother, My Keeper do his thing, but definitely. With all that said, just all the links is in the box. So today, like I said, when I finally say, you know what, I feel like speaking again, a whole lot of stuff is popping up. Okay, so there's an article that I saw. Sorry about that. There's an article that I saw today, as a matter of fact. And it says, Georgia elementary school teacher plays slavery game in a class with one black student. It's funny. It's real funny. I'm going to read the article because this is going to be a little collaboration Left Project conversation. So we're going to talk about this for a little bit, and then I'm going to read what I promised I was going to read, because if I log off, I don't know when I'm going to get back to reading again. So I'm going to just do it all in one shot. So, and if you would like, I'm going to share my screen with you so that you can see some of the way the titles are hilarious, because they're all about, again, getting clicks and all of this stuff like this. But if you haven't seen this article, we'll check it out together, shall we? And then I'll let you know what I think, and then you could let me know what you think, and then we could go forward reading what we said we were going to read last week. So here it is right here. Oh, no, where did it go? Oh, well, there's more than one of them. This one says teacher. They both say about the same thing. So teacher plays slavery game in class with one black student. Okay, here it is. It says, Georgia elementary school teacher plays slavery game in a class with one black student. You like how they wrote that? But let's continue. This is her grandmother, Dolores Bunch Kemmer. A Georgia teacher led her 5th grade social studies class through an interactive game about American slavery, a tasteless lesson that especially shocked the only African American in the class. The girl's grandmother told WSB-TV the social studies class played a game in which they pretended to be slaves escaping to the Underground Railroad. With a roll of the dice, the students decided their fate, whether they escaped further into the woods, eventually to liberation, and were sent back to the plantation. So they rolled the dice. Whatever the dice roll on, that's going to determine, because she have this little spreadsheet thing that they put somewhere along here. Here it is down here. But let's see what it says. A grading rubric showed the teacher judged students on their organization and coherence, quote unquote, while playing the game, and the quote imaginative details, end quote, they brought to it. The Cheatham Hill elementary teacher also wanted the children to participate in, quote, 10 or more events from the simulation. The only black student in the class, who was 10, said she was sent back to the plantation 6 times, a place where she was told she'd be beaten. She was very concerned, Dolores Bunch Kemmer, the girl's grandmother, told WSB-TV, recalling her granddaughter's shaken reaction. So here's the little sheet right here, sample Underground Railroad dice simulation. I don't know how they would get like 13, 14, 15 unless they had like many dice. But anyway, one, beginning on the plantation, begin on the road, sent back to the plantation, cabin to rest, freedom quilt in cabin, escape to woods, stay in woods, sent back to plantation, on the road, sent back to plantation, escape to woods, sent back to plantation, escape to woods on the road, follow north woods, or sent back to the plantation. I could see the expression on her face. This is her grandmother. Bunch said she spoke with teacher as Marietta School, but the teacher said she had never received complaints about her horrific history lesson. If we did a Holocaust game and people had to roll the dice, if they were going to go in the gas chamber, do you see any similarity to that? That's what the grandmother was making an analogy between, you know, making slavery into this interactive game for the children and doing the same with the Holocaust. She didn't, and that was wrong. So basically the teacher was like, she doesn't see the similarity. The Cobb County School District eventually released a statement hinting at a possible punishment for the teacher. Chittenden Hill administrators are not aware in the advance of the activity, the statement said. The activity is in question was not approved lesson plan. School officials are taking appropriate personal action with the teacher. Bunch Kemmer identified the teacher in the Facebook post, and the name matches a white 5th grade social studies teacher at Chittenden Hill. The teacher website says she has taught there for 2 years, comes from a family of educators, end quote, and provides a, quote, positive learning environment packed full of hands-on activities and encouragement. The teacher did not immediately return messages from the Daily News, and it says the district did not officially identify the teacher or say if she faced any punishment. The district also did not detail how the teacher brought the game into her curriculum, without any administrators knowing, which I highly doubt, because she claimed she didn't have any concerns before. I don't know how much they tell the truth, if it just came there, or is this the first time somebody's complaining? No. Feel free to let me know your thoughts on that. That was an interesting article. There's so many other stuff going on, but I just want to stay on this article just for a little bit, because yeah, we're gonna go into the reparations conversation, and so I just think it's good to look at how we look at and others look at this conversation as it regards slavery. Now, maybe let me say 8 months ago or a little more, I would have had a different reaction. And when I first read it, I kind of had so we have, wait, hold on, let me put it.
Your new birth
we have
certificate,
Kylie Green saying, peace, everyone, peace to you. Son of Levi, peace. I'm Shalom. And Kylie says, oh, hell nah, these white folks are getting real bold. Yeah, this is what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about what are your thoughts on the article? If you just joined us, the article is in the box. Basically, long story short, teacher social studies did a simulation game as it related to slavery. Like I said, we've been reading the Left Project here since January 1. Before I read a ton, and there's so much more to go, of narratives, I would have been offended. But I have to tell the truth. As I was reading it, my emotions was kind of mixed, because I'm like, I don't know why I'm not offended. I'm not offended. And here's why. And it's going to lead into the reparations conversation. When you take an honest look, and this is just me, where I am in my journey, everybody else is at different spaces. When you do a certain amount of research in this area, and you have worked through the emotional baggage, the emotional damage, and you begin to deal with that in your own life, and you look at the situation for what it is a hard thing to convey without changing the narrative, especially to children. There was a case, I think last year, where they changed in the textbook, it was a high schooler, and they changed slave or enslaved peoples to migrant workers or forced, migration or something of that nature. And everybody was offended. So it's like, you can't really win for losing. I'm not backing what these people are doing. What I'm saying is that if you change the narrative and say that our foreparents were not slaves, then someone is stealing the reality and trying to cover it up. And when you try to introduce the children to the reality of slavery, when the child said that she felt degraded, I don't know what was happening in the classroom. Let me just say that. I wasn't in the classroom. I'm taking just the situation into today as it relates to this conversation. And this is just Imuna speaking. When you say you feel degraded about understanding a portion of history, that is the normal response, even today, of Many people, they still feel the shame. I read an article the other day about an elder who said her parents never spoke about it, her family never spoke about it because they felt shame concerning slavery. So if you still feel shame, if you're hypersensitive, if you don't take the time to learn so that you can deal with it, it's an impossible situation. Now, I don't know the teacher. I'm not backing the teacher, but when you deal with the facts of what we're talking about, the reality is the chances of you being captured and returned back to the plantation was great. So whether or not this teacher did a bit of history or understanding, running away, and the reality is when you did get caught after you ran away, you would be beat, you would be chastised, you would be hurt. Typically, what can we expect from them? We need to educate our children. They have their doctrines, they do their jobs very well. And that's Danera. And that's another thing I wanted to speak about as it related to. Thank you so much for sharing. And if you have your thoughts, feel free to share on this topic, because that's another thing that came up into my mind. The expectation of the perpetrator in this case, which would have been the oppressor, sharing and teaching your story. But here's the thing. If we don't do it, who do we expect to do it? And why do we expect them to do it the way we would do it? So like Danera said, she's the only Black child. The first thought that came to my mind is, why are you sending her into a space where she is a minority amongst minorities? Like, you chose to send her there. If this was an issue before, so I'm looking at the whole situation. This is just me. Like I said, after months and months of reading the reality of what would happen when you try to escape off a plantation. So if this woman, whoever she is trying to simulate a real game about the Underground Railroad, and for those who just joined us, we did the whole series of the Underground. So if you missed it, go check it out. It'll probably have it in the playlist. And you will see the breakdown of the Underground, which is the same conversation that the teacher seems like she was trying to translate to fifth graders. That the reality is running off was a great risk. Living in the woods or running off into the woods, which many would do, some would only do it for short periods of time because they couldn't take it, and then they would have to escape. Escaping successfully was not an easy feat. So we have to, at some point, take some level of personal responsibility. And if grandma doesn't like the way that the European is translating this story, well, grandma, you need to tell the child a story, because not telling the child a story is still an injustice. I'm sorry, that's just a Muna. Like I said, that's why I had to take a break, because I started getting turned up on this left project right here. And because I can no longer have that emotional conversation, because we have to begin to work through it, honestly. When we first started, so many people said, why do you want to read that, Amuna? I don't want to talk about it. But when somebody else talks about it, you're offended. And when somebody else doesn't talk about it, you're offended. And when somebody else doesn't acknowledge it, you're offended. And when they do acknowledge it, come on. We have to pick something. Pick something. Educate ourselves. You know what my children said when I was about to come on here? They said, Muna. They said, Mommy, you're going to do a slavery? Because I'm educating my children. It's nothing like was just said in the chat room. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Danera. Who said it? No, Maxim. Welcome. Greetings, everybody. There's nothing to be ashamed of, but there's so many people that are ashamed. That we are ashamed to a certain, we know about the slave patrols and the conscription of all whites to participate. Yeah, there's so many levels to slavery. The reality of being beat, it's not a shame to the person who was being beat. The system should be ashamed. The system that allowed for this mass abuse to this degree and degradation of a people. Why are you still carrying the shame? Part of it is because we don't really understand it. All we still feel is the pain. And so that was a mixed story for me. I don't know. I was like, okay, grandma, are you going to tell her the story, or are you just going to complain that you don't like the way the teacher's telling the story? I'm just trying to wonder. We have to begin to grow up out of victim mentality. That's all I'm saying. For those who just joined us, I was just going over, and as promised, we're going to touch on, and I said it before, I was interested. There's so many people in the field who are so interested in healing, knowing that we have to get to this portion, right? But now I'm going to go over to Now, when the degradation, when compensation comes into play and the conversation of being compensated, people might all of a sudden be very well interested in this. But if it's not for the right reason, you're going to miss the value of it. And I promised last week that we was going to read what a lot of people don't know exists. A lot of people are like, yeah, give us some reparations. We want it, we owe. But the reality is, in order to say that you want reparations, or that you want to be paid or compensated, or you want some repair to be done, you have to look at the damage. You have to assess the damage. Again, I use the analogy of someone, most I forbid, who gets in a fender bender or they get in a wreck. What happens? You call the insurance company. They send out the appraiser. They send out the person who's going to assess the damage. And then they're going to tell you how much I'm going to write this off for. But we don't want to assess the damage. And then when we get mad when other people assess the damage, again, we have to choose. And I'm going to share my screen with you right now. And we're going to jump on over to, we're going to jump over to HR 40. HR 40, I don't know how many people know what HR 40 is? I'm about to read it right now. But HR 40, a lot of people don't know. For over the last 20 years, I think he first introduced it in 1989, if I'm not mistaken. 89? I think. It was 20 years, because every other year he has introduced this. One elder, he's like 80-something at this point. His name is John Conyers. And people speak about reparations in this abstract type of way. Or I saw somebody else calculate this week, somebody put out something, a teacher calculates how much reparation, how many billion, trillion. Okay, we have to assess the damage, because money alone is not going to repair the damage that was done. That's just real talk. And so this is something that's real. It's probably going to be, the last time it was presented was in January 6, 2015. And it's every other year he seems to be presenting it. So it's probably going to come again this January. We need to bring awareness to this. We need to bring more and more awareness so that we can understand what's actually on the table and the things that have actually been done. So, sorry, let me read. 114th Congress, first session, HR 40. This is what HR 40 is. To acknowledge the fundamental injustice, I'm going to read real slow, cruelty, brutality, and inhumanity of slavery in the United States and the 13 American colonies between 1619 and 1865, and to establish a commission to examine, let's understand what this is. This is the proposal to examine the damages and then be able to tabulate how much is owed. It says to establish a commission to examine the institution of slavery. It is a must. Subsequently, de jure and de facto racial and economic discrimination, police brutality, economic issues, all of the things against African Americans, and the impact of these forces on living African Americans, to make recommendations to the Congress and appropriate remedies and for other purposes. This is something that is real, that has many times, it has not passed the introduction phase. He has presented it 10 times over the last 20 years, and it has not passed the introduction phase. They keep ignoring this bill. So let's continue to read. In the House of Representatives, January 6, 2015, Mr. Conyers, I believe he's of Michigan, the elder, he says, Mr. Conyers introduced the following bill, which was referred to the Committee on the Judiciary, a bill to acknowledge the fundamental injustice, cruelty, brutality, and inhumanity of slavery in the United States and the 13 colonies between 1619 and 1865, and to establish a commission to examine the institution of slavery, subsequently de jure and de facto, and economic discrimination against, where are we, African Americans, and the impact of these forces on living African Americans, to make recommendations to the Congress on appropriate remedies and for other purposes. Hold on 1 second. Let me close some of this stuff. Close some of this stuff so we don't. It says, be it enacted by the Senate and the House of Representatives of the United States of Congress assembled. Section 1, short title. This is the name of it if you want to look it up on your own time. Again, this is the article. I put the link to the information. Here's what it is. Short title. The act may be cited as the, quote, Commission to Study Reparations Proposal for African Americans Act, end quote. Findings and purpose. Findings. The Congress finds that approximately 4 million Africans and their descendants were enslaved in the United States and colonies that became the United States from 1619 to 1865. 2. The institution of slavery was constitutionally and statutorily sanctioned by the government of the United States from 1789 through 1865. 3. The slavery that flourished in the United States constituted an immoral and inhumane deprivation of Africans' life, liberty, African citizenship rights, and cultural heritage, and denied them the fruits of their own labor. And 4. Sufficient inquiry has not been made into the effects of the institution of slavery on living African Americans and societies in the United States. B. Purpose. The purpose of this act is to establish a commission to 1. Examine the institution of slavery which existed from 1619 through 1865 within the United States and the colonies that became the United States, including the extent to which the federal and state governments constitutionally and statutorily supported the institution of slavery. 2. Examine de jure and de facto discrimination against freed slaves and their descendants from the end of the Civil War to the present, including economic, political, and social discrimination. 3. Examine the lingering negative effects of the institution of slavery and the discrimination described in paragraph 2 on living African Americans, quote unquote African Americans, and on society in the United States. Everything that everybody's talking about, there is this bill to examine it and bring it before those who are to be held accountable for what we are seeing and experiencing in this space and time. 5. Recommend appropriate remedies in consideration of the commission's finding on the matters described in paragraphs 1 and 2. And 6. Submit to the Congress the results of the examination together with such recommendations. 3. Establishment and duties. A. Establishment. There is established a commission to study reparations proposal for African Americans, hereinafter in the act referred to as the commission. B. Duties. The commission shall perform the following duties. 1. Examine the institution of slavery which existed within the United States and the colonies that became the United States from 1619 through 1865. The commission's examination shall include an examination of the capture and procurement of Africans. B. The transport of Africans to the United States and the colonies that became the United States for the purpose of enslavement, including their treatment during transport. C. The sale and acquisition of Africans as chattel property in interstate and intrastate commerce. And D. The treatment of African slaves in the colonies and the United States, including the deprivation of their freedom, exploitation of their labor, and destruction of their culture, language, religion, and families. 2. Examine the extent to which the federal and state governments of the United States supported the institution of slavery in constitutional and statutory provisions, including the extent to which such governments prevented, opposed, restricted efforts of freed Africans to repatriate to their homeland. And that's a whole nother story. These things that he just went over, each one of them is a study in itself. Like no one could be proficient in all these phases with right here. This is why he says it takes a commission, it takes a team. Examine federal and state laws and discriminated against freed African slaves and the descendants during the period between the end of the Civil War and present. 4. Examine other forms of discrimination in the public and private sectors against freed African slaves and their descendants during the period between the end of the Civil War and the present. 5. Examine the lingering negative effects of the institution of slavery and the matters described in paragraph 1, 2, 3, and 4 on living African Americans and on society in the United States. 6. Recommend appropriate ways to educate the American public of the commission's finding. So let me just recap. For those who have just joined us, I am reading over H.R. 40. This was the recent edition that came out that he proposed And you can follow the life of the bill. So if you go to what I put in the box, you can definitely follow the life of the bill and see what happens with the bill. I'm gonna look at the comments in a second, but just to recap, he's saying the examination. Do you think that the team that's going to come together is all Europeans? No. The people who have to look at this, the people who have to examine it, the people who have to assess what has happened and what is going on, the people who it affected has to be involved in this conversation, hypothetically, because so many people think that this is not even real and that, you know, reparations is just something that happens for everyone else. But this is a real conversation. 6, it says, no, 7. Recommend appropriate remedies in consideration of the commission's finding on the matters described in paragraph 1, 2, 3, and 4. In making such recommendations, the commission shall address, among other issues, the following questions. A, whether the government of the United States should offer a formal apology on behalf of the people of the United States for the perpetration of gross human rights violations on African slaves and their descendants. B, because it is a gross human right violation, whether African Americans still suffer from the lingering effects of the matters described in paragraphs 1, 2, 3, and 4. C, whether in consideration of the commission's finding any form of compensation to the descendants of African slaves is warranted. D, and compensation is not only just in monetary. It is things that, like, for some people who want to start businesses, they give them grants, they give them this, that. It comes in different forms. D, and therapy should definitely, but therapy not from them, definitely not. But it should come in many forms, because the subjugation in this society is real. It says D, if the commission finds that such compensation is warranted, what should be done, or what should be the amount of compensation? What form of compensation should be awarded, and who shall be eligible for such compensation? All of these things, you know, are questions, because again, if in the state that a lot of quote unquote Black people are today, truth be told, if one was to fully get material compensations, monetary, is going to be gone and no lesson is learned. And part of the lesson to be learned, part of the understanding, part of the healing is going through the actual footsteps and going through the process of learning and purging all of this epigenetic material that has built up within our system. It says C, report to Congress. The commission shall submit a written report of its findings and recommendations to the Congress not later than the date, which is 1 year after the date of the first meeting of the commission held pursuant to section 4C. Section 4, membership, number, and appointment. The commission shall be composed of 7 members who shall be appointed within 90 days after the date of enactment of this act as follows. A, 3 members shall be appointed by the president. B, 3 members shall be appointed by Speaker of the House of Representatives. Like, why wasn't this brought up during the last presidency, the last 8 years? Why is it has been so hush-hush when this would have been a prime time to have this conversation? Why have many people been distracted during this time? This is very interesting. 3 members shall be appointed by the president. 3 members shall be appointed by Speaker of the House of Representatives. 1 member should be appointed by the president pro tempore of the state. All members of the commission shall be persons who are especially qualified to serve on the commission by virtue of their education, training, or experience, particularly in the field of African American studies. And you have a plethora of African American study scholars right now who are educating the people and the masses, but we're not listening and learning and purging as in the way that we need to, so that we can have this conversation. B, terms. The term of office for members shall be for the life of the commission, which was 1 year. It says a vacancy in the commission shall not affect the powers of the commission and shall be filled in the same manner in which the original appointment was made. C, first meeting. The president shall call the first meeting of the commission within 120 days after the date of the enactment of this act, or within 30 days after the date of which legislation is enacted, making appropriations to carry out this act, whichever date is latter. Quorum. 4 members of the commission shall constitute a quorum, but a lesser number may hold hearings. Chair and vice chair. The commission shall elect a chair and vice chair from among its members. The term of office of each shall be for the life of the commission. Once again, 1 year study. Compensation. And we're almost at the end here. Wait a minute. Compensation. Except as provided in paragraph 2, each member of the commission shall receive compensation on the daily equivalent to the annual rate of basic pay payable for GS 18 of the general schedule under section 5332 of Title 5 United States Code for each day, including travel time during which he or she is engaged in the actual performance of duties vested in the commission. A member of the commission who is full-time officer or employee of the United States or member of the Congress shall receive no additional pay, allowances, or benefits by reason of his or her service of the commission. All members of the commission shall be reimbursed for travel, subsistence, and other necessary expenses incurred by them in the performance of their duties to the extent authorized by Chapter 57 of Title 5 United States Code. For those who just joined us, please continue to stick with us. Right now, we're reading something that oftentimes we don't hear about, which is the actual commission, the proposal to study what happened during the transatlantic slave trade, assess the damages, and come up with things that will remedy this situation of what we're seeing about the police brutality, economic disparity, drugs in the community. All of the systematic takedown of the community is what is supposed to be addressed in this commission that for some reason can't seem to pass the floor in introductions. Once again, many people do not even have an understanding or awareness of this. It says 19 hearings and sessions. The commission may, for the purpose of carrying out the provisions of this act, hold such hearings and sit and act at such times and at such places in the United States, and request the attendance and testimony of such witnesses and the production of such books, records, correspondence, memoranda, papers, and documents as the commission considers appropriate. The commission may request, again, it's supposed to be of 7 people if I'm not mistaken, but they also could outsource, and this is what it's going to say. The commission may request the Attorney General to invoke the aid of an appropriate United States District Court to require by subpoena or otherwise such attendance, testimony, or production. B, powers of subcommittees and members. Any subcommittee or members of the commission may, if authorized by the commission, take any action which the commission is authorized to take by this section. 9C, once again, you see little stuff like Roots and Underground, nobody wants to watch, or people are upset. Now they're talking about, we're going to get to the part where a lot of people all of a sudden are going to be real interested in this conversation, but let me continue. C, obtaining official data. The commission may acquire directly from the head of any department, agency, or instrumentality of the executive branch of the government available information which the commission considers useful in the discharge of its duties, meaning supposedly hidden information, stuff that's not public. If it's needed for the commission, they got to come up off it, and they got to declassify certain things and let certain things be known. All departments, agencies, and instrumentalities of the executive branch of the government shall cooperate. Are you seeing what he put in here? After this, I'm gonna go over to the site so you can see who is speaking here. But he put in here that, yo, you got to come up with all papers or information that is going to be needed for me to come to a correct conclusion. All of the stuff that people think is conspiracy, all of these declassified files, like I think Marcus Garvey's one is declassified because I read it. The declassified files that they had on Marcus, they're supposed to declassify. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King soon. They're supposed to declassify his. I think 40 years is gone or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of information that they're sitting on that will lend credence to the conversation. It says, cooperate with the commission with respect to such information and shall furnish all information requested by the commission to the extent permitted by law. Section 6, administrative provisions. Staff. The commission may, without regard to section 5311B of Title 5 United States Code, appoint and fix the compensation of such personnel as the commission considers appropriate. So basically they can outsource. Applicability of certain civil service laws, the state of the commission may be appointed without regard to the provisions of the Title 5 United States Code governing appointments in the competitive service, and without regard to the provisions of Chapter 51, Subchapter 3 of Chapter 53, and such title relating to classification of general schedule pay rates. Except that the compensation of any employee of the commission may not exceed a rate equal to the annual rate of basic payable GS 18, meaning you just can't start banking off of the project. You can't be like, yes, and I want you to pay me whatever. It has to be within whatever their guidelines is of the general schedule under section 5332 of Title 5 United States. 10, experts and consultants. The commission may procure the services of experts and consultants in accordance with the provisions of Section 3109B of Title V United States Code, but at rates for individual not to exceed the daily equivalent of the highest rate payable under Section 5332 of such title. Administrative support services. The Commission may enter into agreement with the Administrator of General Services for procurement of financial and administrative services necessary for the discharge of the duties of the Commission. Payment for such, so they can contract, for such services shall be made by reimbursement from funds of the Commission in such amounts as may be agreed upon by the Chairman of the Commission and the Administrator. E, contracts. The Commission may, 1, procure supplies, services, property by contract in accordance with the applicable laws and regulations to the extent or in such amount as are provided in appropriation acts. And 2, enter into contract. For those who have just joined me and us, if you have any questions or comments, this is legalese here. I'm going to answer the questions in 1 second. That's a Johnny Cochran. Hey, you have to. This is not even about right here. What we're reading is not even lawyer stuff. What we're reading is these bills. Some of the stuff that you see, like make such and such a national holiday. They present the bill go to the floor, they pass or they don't pass. I'm gonna go over to the site so that you can see some of the bills that have passed. But this one mysteriously has not. And other ones that are kind of likened to it, but is not talking about reparations, has. And so we're going to look over there in a minute, but I'm going to finish this up because we're almost done. It says, 2, enter into contracts with departments, agencies, and instrumentalities of the federal government, state agencies, and private firms, institutions, and agencies for the conduct of research or surveys, the preparations of reports, and other activities necessary for the discharge of duties of the Commission, to the extent or in such amounts are provided in appropriation acts. Termination. The Commission shall terminate 90 days after the date of which the Commission submits its report to the Congress under 3C. And lastly, authorization of appropriation. To carry out the provisions of this act, there are authorized to be appropriated $8 million. That had to be last, right? $8 million. $8 million, not for reparations. And I'm gonna release my screen right here as I talk to you guys and then hop on over there. $8 million is not for the reparation conversation. And welcome, this is Amuni Israel. Thank you for joining us. $8 million is for the Commission for the year to employ a whole team of people to examine the institution of slavery. The damage that was done, it is obvious the damage that's done, and not obvious some of the damage that is done epigenetically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And we see it on a day-to-day. But one of the things that before I even knew about this, that I find striking is the very thing that John Conyers is proposing be done in order to compensate is the very thing that we the people don't want to do for ourselves before we even heard about this. Before we heard about the Commission, before we heard about anything, the very thing that he's talking about, that close examination, the stuff that's going to make you feel uncomfortable, the stuff that's going to make you upset, you're going to start crying or you're going to whatever. All we want to know is get us to the money. But like I said, the money is going to go in red bottoms, Louis Vuitton, Yaki weaves and all kind of crazy, Benzes and Bentleys and Beamers. And that's where it's going to go because we have been damaged beyond monetary. We have been damaged beyond monetary. I'm gonna read some of this and then we're gonna go over to the site. It is, I don't do African American. I like quote unquote, but he wrote the thing. This is an elder and he's old too. And what's happened? Let me read through first. They won't ever address that. There's a deep-seated hate for us. They understand our condition. They can care less. But the thing is, the world is the world is paying attention. And this is what, I like to say never because the South thought slavery was never going to end. So, what I'm saying? We never know how stuff go, but definitely they're going to be forced to, as we see now, forced to have the conversation. Maxim says, true, every part was done with intent. The amount owed is more than, the amount owed is ridiculous. I also think all the invention that came from black minds and contributed, this is son of Levi, Levy, and proceeds and credits from these inventors should go into the sentence. Cain, it's like It's like the lady, I forgot her name. Her name escapes me. If you guys know her name, put it in the box. Where they took her cells and they have been reproducing her cells over and over and over again, and her family didn't know. You understand what I'm saying? Oh, so this is what would go into the assessment. Now you see how big of a commission this is. It's not just about the stealing onto the boats. It's not just about the chattel slavery. It's about everything from that point to this. All of the robbing, all of the misappropriation, all of the intellectual property theft, everything. It's huge. It says, and remediation and the oppression of legislation. Like if it came, welcome Queen Anya Taylor. We need to, yeah, they're repressing this, but I saw last year that international organization, which I'm going to try to go back and look for it, was like, hey, no, pass HR 40. So now the international organization approached the UN, was like, we know what's going on and you people need to look at this. So I'm going to go to the site, but before I do, Danae said, if they decide to even look at that, who do y'all think will gather your present represent us? The most coonest coon of them all may even try to shoot it down. And we need institutions. Here's the thing, what I say about this. On so many levels, wait a minute, no. On so many levels, this is what I said. If we read through, before we got to the money, because remember, the money was generated from the labor, from the intellectual property. So it's kind of like, you're talking about a people who make money, meaning in their ability. Can you understand what I'm saying? So at this point, the money for me, I'm just talking about Emuna. The money is not it, because we have lost more than the money. We have lost our right minds. Maya, no. We have lost our community. We have lost our dignity. We have lost so much through this process that the money, again, because we see stars, they get money, it don't change them, it don't make it better. So the process of healing that which have been broken is something that we have to take a look at. But you know, once again, it's a conversation that accountability needs to be there, but the majority of us don't even know that something of this nature even exists, and it's just really at this point bringing it to the forefront. They always say blacks never contribute to society. Kane, how many towns, hamlets, and lands destroyed or taken by force? Too many. He said, I wish Johnny Cracken was here. Thomas Showell isn't allowed to participate. Yo, and to my knowledge, before he died or was, yeah, he was looking into a reparation case. That's what I heard. He was looking into a reparation case. I heard that as well. He went to the UN, as did Malcolm X, and they both died shortly thereafter. Where do you go to read the classified files? And I have a question for Emuna. Go ahead, Kyle. The classified, I have to go back and look. You know, I'll be doing research, but I did read it's a declassified file. I'm gonna look it up for you, Sons of Levi. I'm gonna look that up, the declassified file. I know it's on Marcus Garvey, where they declassified and was like, yeah, we sent out people, headed him to Liberia, and we told the Liberian government they better not let them in, blah, blah, blah. That because that was so long ago. But because Malcolm X, I keep saying Malcolm. Martin, first of all, Martin Luther King family sued the government. A lot of people don't know that they sued the government for the assassination, and they won, but it didn't get a lot of coverage. So that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. But I'm going to look for that for you. Somebody says they have a cuss. It's just too much old. Yes, thank you, Henrietta Lacks. Thank you so much. Henrietta Lacks is the sister. So again, we're talking about things that go beyond money. Just green money. It goes to intellectual property, all kind of stuff. Since we defeated living in a global system of white supremacy, do you think we can really come together one day to overcome this thing? I'll say this, and just coming from my perspective of healing, it may be short-sighted on my behalf, but what I would say is my concentration is the collective injury. And here's why I say that. When we look at the co-conscious community right now, we see so many fractions, and people be like, why can't we all just come together? The reality is, before we entered the boat, we weren't all together. This is what studying this portion of history would tell you. People want to deny it, but that is the truth. We were all different nationalities, different tribes, different people who had different ideologies and things of this nature. What we do share is a collective trauma. And that collective trauma is whether you came from whether you're Yoruba, whether you Igbo, whether you're from the Ivory Coast, whether you're from Gili, that is the collective trauma that we share. And this is why I concentrated on that, because once we get beyond the collective trauma, I cannot determine what someone's souls gravitate towards. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because our souls gravitate towards different things for different reasons. And I cannot determine and try to force into somebody based on your skin color that you are X, Y, and Z, because the reality is when we look at the continent, it doesn't even operate like that on the continent. So how am I to expect a people that has experienced this collective trauma to act like that? For me, it's not realistic, but I do think we could come together and discuss in this collective trauma as it related to the enslavement and the dispersion of the people, wherever you came from before that point. So if you wasn't together before, you are now. It's kind of like that fictive kinship. When you were sold from your family, your mother, your father, that's why we walk around and say stuff like, hey, brother, hey, sister. The European will look at you like, you know that person? We're like, no, I don't know him. I just met him. And they're baffled by that concept because we have that level of fictive kinship where as soon as you look like my mother or look like my aunt or look like, I'm going to give you the respect of a mother, a aunt, a father, a grandmother. We do that. That's just within us to do. And this was a survival mechanism during the time of slavery. So, yes, Mona Daenerys says, have to be shown how to make use of the monetary and financial systems. Should the gentrification exploit us to generate wealth? This is Maxim asking questions, very, very important questions. We're going to have to come back and, deal with some of this stuff on a deeper level for real. We will overcome, she says, when the Messiah returns. Facts. Maxim says, compensate all former children left without parents, died to flood drugs in the community. And Bahamians have a whole different trauma. It's crazy. Yes, this is what I'm saying. It's a collective trauma, and then depending on who your oppressor was, it's a whole different trauma. And again, the reason I read this HR 40 is in the link is because it's good to be aware, and it's good to know what we can do. There's a part that we can't do, and then there's a part that we can do. And I've always been taught, do what you can do. Because sometimes when we be like, oh, I only wish, if only, please stop and leave this chair alone. If only I could do this, if we disempower ourselves, there's a part that we can do. And that is, for me, something that we should take a look at. Please don't do that. The baby's like, yeah, what I can do is go outside. Go ahead, you could go on the porch. Go on the porch. Okay, I'm going to show you guys shortly where I see some of this information from, right? Like Amuna's bugging out. Okay, wait, actually, sister. The name of the person who introduced this is Representative John Conyers. He's out of Michigan. Okay, if I click here, let me show you his face a little bit. This is him right here, John Conyers. He has been in the House since 1965. Okay. Since 1965. He moved districts there, but he's been since 1965 to present. So you do the math on that one. Do the math. What is funny is it shows you how many since 1965, 75, 85, 95, 205, 215. So he's been there for 56 years. Okay. He has been proposing this for 20 years. When you look at some of the proposed legislation that he has put forth, you can follow the life of the bill here. So he has another one, Commission of the Social Status of Black Men and Boys Act. Sometimes we think nothing is going on only because we don't know. You understand what I'm saying? But okay, he just proposed this one this month, 8/10/2016, Commission of Social Status of Black Men and Boys Act. But I want to take a look at, you look at some of the stuff that he has proposed, and then it became a law. Check it out. To designate the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 10721 East Jefferson Ave in Detroit, Michigan, as Mary M. McCoy Post Office Building. So he made a mission. Apparently, this has to be somebody. If somebody looks it up, it's going to be somebody who did something that he felt it was something worthy of renaming a post office, and it became law. Okay, he presented this The last action was on 7/29. So if you can understand, he's there doing a lot of this putting forth. Not everything he introduces gets passed. Safe Drinking Water Act, Improved Compliance Awareness Act, it passed the House. Some of this stuff passed the House, but particularly the reparations, the 400, listen, this one is interesting. This is what I say, stuff that is similar. 400 Years of African American History Commission Act. This one passed the House. However, the one as it relates to shelling out the money to take a look at this didn't even pass being introduced. Once again, on your own time, you could take a look at some of this stuff so that we can understand and do some of the research as it relates to the information that's coming forward. And those other agencies who are saying, hey, there's something going on here. And it's something that needs to be taken a look at. And so with that, is that what I wanted to say? Yeah, there's a whole lot going on right here. But once again, that is something that share it with someone. They may not have known. And we SNAP Healthy Incentives Act 2016. We can do the parts that we can do. We may not be the expertise on a certain situation or subject, but we definitely can see the benefit of why we need to assess what is happening to us in our communities and in our neighborhoods and begin to make that change. So I know I promised I was going to read that. I did. I want to thank everybody for sticking with me through it. If you missed the beginning, then just rewind it. You know, at the end of this, let me see if anybody has any more questions or comments. You guys raised so many interesting things. We might have to, where did I put it? We might have to take a look. Hold on. We might have to take a look at some of that. But again, the elder who was offended and the young girl who was offended, but it's the truth. I know sometimes the truth can be an offense, but because we are hypersensitive to our reality, we are highly offended on an ongoing basis. But the truth is, like I said earlier, if you try to escape the plantation, more often than not, hold on one second. Come on, thing. More often than not, you would be taken back. All start with the letter S. And Kylie says, hold on, come on, thing. Kylie says, yes, Africa is we have culture, but the people are so connected to the oppressor, and that's part of the stuff that we have to do. That's not something that they're responsible for. That's something that we're responsible for. It says, we have culture, but the people are connected to the oppressors. All of us across the diaspora, including those enslaved by Arabs. That's what Maxim says. Kylie says, I hear Africa is facing Chinese colonization. Yeah, pretty much. Like I said, for those who don't know, I lived in Ethiopia back from 2008 to 2009. And at that time, if you know the history of Ethiopia, it was never fully colonized. The Italians tried, they weren't successful, Mussolini. And then so Ethiopia was like this little enclave, this little, cut off from certain things. And when it began to open up, it became the Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. Everybody's like, oh, it's the poorest country, blah, 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 blah. I didn't believe the hype. So I went there to live. Myself and our family. When I was leaving, I began to see that colonization that Kylie is talking about, where in exchange for, and I just read, as a matter of fact, the whole issue behind the runner who threw up the Solidarity X in the Olympics, that is dealing with the colonization of Ethiopia. And I said to my mother, who I was talking to, I was there for 9 months. So I lived there amongst the people, not, where they live at, go outside, salam no, and then no, you seeing Ethiopians, you talking to them, and all that kind of stuff. And in the country as well as in the city. The Solidarity X, and let me see if I can find it. The Solidarity X that he threw up was in response to that colonization. And I said to my mother, I bet that it has something to, this is before I knew, that I bet it has something to do with them taking away their land and what's happening. Because when I was leaving here, what's happening is that if you have certain lands, and I'm going to show you him right now. If you have certain land and they feel like now they want to colonize the country and they want the country to advance, which not only China's not the only one. It's Germany, it's Turkey, it's China, it's somebody else. So China's not the only one that's in there. China is in their hard body. Don't get it twisted. You know, China's building roads for cheap. But the funny thing is, when I was there and the family was there, and here he is right here. Olympic protest runner fails to return to Ethiopia because, again, and his name is Fayisha Lisa, failed to return to Ethiopia Monday despite assurances he would not be punished. Because this sign he threw up has to do with the issues that are happening. It has to do with the fact that they're taking their ancestral land and giving it to the people for development. And so I do remember when I was there, there was a lot of Chinese in the embassy and trying to start up businesses, and they have succeeded. I mean, people tell me that Addis Ababa is unrecognizable at this point. Like, you wouldn't recognize it. It looked like America. It looked like foreign. You understand what I'm saying? And so for the Ethiopians, they are like, yeah, this is modernization. There was also, as I was looking up, 2 factories, huge factories, and it's not Chinese who built it. It was huge factories built, clothing factories, fabric factories in Addis Ababa, employing over 4,000 people. But then I began to look at the research, and the people are now protesting, saying they don't like the treatment. So I say that to say it's not only China in a land grab in Africa. I know most about Ethiopia because that's where I was, but it's not just China. And they're welcoming it because they want to be on par with the West. So they're welcoming it in a certain degree, but they are displacing the peoples. And so what happened was the peoples were protesting in this particular case, in the I think it's the Omoro section of Ethiopia. They were protesting, and then the government and the soldiers began to shoot into the crowd and began to actually kill and take to jail the protesters. So it's wild. There's a lot of stuff going on. But yes, it's all caused by globalization to a certain level, economic takeover, and people trying to extend their borders. So it's a beautiful country. A lot is still going on all over the world. Yeah, of course, because it's the one thing they say about Ethiopia is that you can't. It's still a space where you can't criticize the government too much openly. You can't. A person kid says he would like to hear about your experience one day in Ethiopia. Maybe a program on it. Yeah, it was an experience. You know, I really look to go back. Not only Ethiopia, but other places as well. It's yes and no. A lot of people say, I'm the type like, yo, I'm not going to talk too long. I'm just going to see what it's about. And a lot of people like, go back to Africa. You know, one thing I can say that my personal experience, other people may be different. And you have to really weigh the experience as it relates to visiting. And I'll say this slowly. You have to weigh your experience as it relates to visiting and living. Visiting, you know, I'm going to go back home. Living, you actually live there. So when we moved to go to Ethiopia and then Israel. And so we went to live. Living is different. You have to adjust, and I will share that. I guess I'll share that. I'll share that as well. You have to adjust to a lot of the things that you've been told in the West. They say, Africa, people all embrace you. Not always true. You know, it's a continent of melanated people, and this is why my perspective is different from many other people's perspective, because people seem to think that just because you're melanated means you're on the same team. That's not true either. Not in my experience. And so this is why I tend to have more of a broadened scope, and people kind of sometimes get upset with me, but I could only speak from what I know. It was a sea of melanated people. Every time I went out the door, to see a European was rare. You understand what I'm saying? And so when you are in there, it is, excuse me, they're playing bubbles really loud. When you are in that space where you can no longer use color as the reason, now you will begin to see human character come into play, because now it's no longer about color. You can't say you don't like me because I'm black. You can't say that, because everybody is melanated. So you lose that excuse and you begin to see, but you still see oppression. You still see people group not liking other people group because that they're from another town, they're from another country, they're over a Shiloh. Please pull this door for me. Pull this door. Kylie says, man, oh man, we are getting defeated on the chessboard out here. but yeah, I mean, you know, we have to assess ourselves. We have to step back. If in our conversations, and this is just Amuna speaking, if we say they a lot, and not us and what it is that we contribute or not, what we have learned or not, or what we're willing to do or not, and if we have not established that, then yeah, we're losing. But when you begin to take back control, when you begin to, and it starts with one, it starts with the individual. When you begin to have morals and standards of what you will stand for, what you will not stand for, what you will sacrifice, what you will not sacrifice, what you will accept. We can't move forward without standards. We don't have any standards across the board as a people. Again, because we're not one people. And that's another thing. So we, you know, some people will say, oh, that doesn't really bother me. I'm okay with this. And then what happens is when you go into a situation, you're compromised. And so, you know, there's so much stuff that needs to be done, but definitely, Person Kid, I'll chip on that a little bit. Colorism is not valid. It's Californication. She said Californication. You know, colorism is not valid. I remember in Addis, okay, why I picked Ethiopia, we picked Ethiopia. I did the stats. We looked at, I don't think we looked at Kenya. We looked at Ghana. We looked at Ghana because there's a lot of expats, there's a lot of repatriates in Ghana as well as Ethiopia. My family, I grew up Rasta, so a lot of Rastas are in Ethiopia as well as Ghana. But I had a propensity towards Ethiopia. So we looked at the government, you know, these are all the things what you look at when you're looking to relocate. A lot of people go, you go back to Africa. No, you have to look at all of what is going on in that country as in intertribal wars, certain things that you have to do the whole schematics of the whole joint. So we took a long time to look at all of these things. I say that to say, when you arrive and you see a sea of people who look like you, meaning in the color, but now you're looking at the phenotypes, because a lot of Ethiopians in the northern places, they have slim noses, curly hair, slender face, slender build, and so you stick out. You understand what I'm saying? They will know if you're not from there. They will know if a Kenyan, because Kenyan is to the south of Ethiopia, Kenya is. They will know that if you're Kenyan and you're visiting the country, it's no longer being black. It's no longer, so you don't have that card anymore. What you do have is the fact that you're a stranger and you're a foreigner, and you have to know, you have to have a certain sense of yourself. You cannot be wishy-washy, because that sometimes the reception that you're looking for, you're probably not going to get, because the thought processes, and this also is the thought process a lot of time when you go to the islands, Caribbean, South America, whatever, the thought process is you got money because you just came from America, or you just came from the UK, so you got more money than me, you become a target. I'm going to target you. So when you talk about black on black, come on. The targeting is real. You understand? And you have to be prepared. You can't be whimsy whamsy. Oh, I miss snickerdoodle bars. You know what I'm saying? Because certain things you're not going to be readily available. So these are all of the stuff, like I said, like you said, Person Kid, I'm going to have to come back and do a whole nother conversation on that, because of my experience in moving all around and being in foreign countries, I've learned you have to be very observant. You have to be a person who's observant of your surroundings. You have to be a person who's in tune with vibrations. You have to know when you're entering into situations that could potentially, just because they're black, don't mean they're down for you. And this is what we need to learn here in America. Race has been used here in America as something that we fight over, because this was what they used to divide. In other places, it's something else. But the reality is, it's all a controlled drama. I experienced that with Black African immigrants in other countries too. That's fascinating, though. Thank you for going into that. Yeah, you're not, I used to live in New York, in Brooklyn, where a lot of Africans was just in that. They didn't never say, hey, my brother, my sister. I remember I was in the store in Midtown Manhattan, and some Africans walked in, and I was there. They looked over me, and they were said to the next African, "Hey, my brother!" Da, 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 and I'm looking like. So there is understand that we're in a precarious situation, and I'll come back. I keep saying that there's a Ghanaian blog, and I'm going to let you guys journey with me and take a look at it. And it's not to cause a division. It's to be real with our situation. We, as the people of the diaspora, are sandwiched on two sides: by the European, who took and enslaved, and also by those on the continent, a lot of people don't like to hear it, who aided in the enslavement of other melanated people. Whether it was Arab, whether it was African, this is fact. And between the two is the people of the diaspora. We are a whole new breed of people, because a lot of times those on the continent there's a shame that is associated with what happened and what some people were complicit with. And we have to be real with that. We like to be nostalgic about the situation, but the reality is, when you read some of these, Brooklyn Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn Bushwick, Bed-Stuy, you right up the street from me, Kylie. Brooklyn Bushwick, we from Bushwick Ave, the top right there. But anywho, Kylie's trying to bring me out into the Bushwick mode. But yeah, it's so much, and it's a very difficult situation, because we become nostalgic. Everything becomes beautiful, and it used to be great. And the reality is, no. I was watching a documentary on Ghana, on finding out how the Ashanti cleared and made this great outpost in the middle of forest. And they said, well, they would enslave people. They would go to war. They would capture them and then make them their slave. Okay, who were you using as your slave to clear out this space? Other melanated people. A lot of people don't want to talk about that, but that is the truth. There's also reports, firsthand accounts, that when you were taken and trekked from the interior and came, y'all got me talking about slave. Y'all know it's been a while, so when you were taken from the interior and brought to, and brought to the outermost portion. Call from. What happens is, it's like you were gone to market twice. So, grab my milk, Kylie, back. Yeah. All right. You were brought, and I did a thing. There's a market called Salata. You could look it up. You were brought to a slave market. And at this slave market, you were traded. From that point, there were people who were again trekked to the coast, which sometimes it could be many moons, as they would say, to get to the exterior. Some people died along the way. The slave market at Salata, they said that the river where they would last bathe, a lot of the river run red with blood. When you were marched out to the edge, right? If the European did not want to buy you, meaning that you just wasted the slave capturer's time and effort. If the European did not want to buy you, there's reports that the melanated kidnapper would shoot or kill or decapitate or murder, basically, whatever means they did, the person who was rejected, the refuge. That's real. So if it's not only that they captured you and they took everybody, they didn't take everybody. They only took the best of the best. Those who were in the best health is who they took on the ship, because they did not want that sick individual. And if you were sick and had to be left back, sometimes not the European, the African would kill you. I say that to say there's a lot to be learned. And once we address this honestly, openly, and in a way that we want good to come from it, but we have to go through the part that hurts. We have to be real about the situation. Not everybody who's melanated likes you. I mean, that's just the reality. Son of Larry said, I heard they are indirectly told not to associate with us. Are Africans that come to America told not to associate with us, born Africans? There's a possibility. And I say there's a possibility because there's also a case in Israel where the Ethiopian Jews, or the Beta Israel, were told and it's been documented, not to associate it with another group who came from America, which was a part of Damona's group. They were told not to associate with them. So there was another sister I know who went to Ethiopia, because there's also a case. Hold on. There's another sister I know who went to Ethiopia, and when she went, she's from the diaspora, and a quote rabbi was there, and he came to see those who were still in Addis. And the rabbi said to somebody I know personally, and they're relaying this story, that why are you talking to her? Meaning the next sister of the diaspora. You understand? So there definitely is a conversation, oftentimes coming from European peoples, that your association with them, those blacks, those people, those children of slaves, because it's a shameful thing in the eyes of people to be a son or a daughter of a slave. So they're lowly, don't associate with them. So this is something that's real that we don't understand unless we hear people having this conversation, that we're not delusional and there's something greater that's going on, but you hardly see that people come and say, hey, they told me not to talk to you. In some cases, depending what it is, they told me not to talk to you, I'm gonna lose my benefits. They told me not to talk to you, whatever. And so I say that to say, I know we're going all over the place, but that was the consolidated version of the report, as well as the reading. Share it, pass it on, tell somebody about HR 40. If you just quickly come to the box and put it in, I'm going to tell you the name of the organization, HR 40 International. One more thing I'll share with you. I like to substantiate what I'm saying. International organization. One more thing. They told wants to be passed. There's an organization, when I first came across this, who was like, no, organization, let me see here, 1 second. They wanted to put pressure on them. Now y'all gonna make me have to go back and find that one. I can't seem to find it. The point of the matter is, let's be about the business of being about some business. I will try to find this article. It was an article from last year. And I think it's a petition. Yeah. No. Yep. Change. All right, let me show you guys this one more thing. Let it not be said this is hype. I like people to go back and do their own research, and not just say, oh yeah, I heard somebody say. Nah, go and do your own research and know what you're talking about when you're talking. Here it is. Pass HR 40 commission to study reparations proposal. Okay, this one is different. So now we have something here. Let's just look at this really quickly. This is somebody else. Who is this? Now y'all got me doing more research. Sign the petition. It's 2,500 signatures. Okay, I'm gonna put this in the link box as well. This is past HR 40 Commission to Study Reparation Proposal for African American Act, National Black Unit Front. I gotta check out what this is about. Hold on. Oh no, it's 29 minutes. We might have to come back. Hold on. It says here briefly, in January of 1989, John Conyers first introduced the bill HR 40 Commission to Study Reparations Proposal for African Americans Act. He has reintroduced, this is what I've been saying, every Congress since 1989. Actually, it's every other year, and will continue to do so until it's passed into law. One of the biggest challenges in discussing the issue of the reparations in a political context is deciding how to have a national discussion without allowing the issue to polarize our party or our nation. The bill suggests that the federal government to undertake an official study of the impact of slavery in the social, political, and economic life of our nation. Over 4 million Africans and their descendants were enslaved in the United States and its colonies. And then he goes into oh wait, let me read a little bit more. It says and its colonies from 1619 to 1865. As a result, the United States was able to begin its grand place as the most prosperous country in the free world on the backs of slaves. We know that. It is uncontroverted that African slaves were not compensated for their labor. More unclear, however, is what the effects and remnants of relationship have had on African Americans in our nation from the time of emancipation through today. The number 40 of the bill was chosen as a symbol of 40 acres and a mule that the United States initially promised freed slaves. This unfulfilled promise and the serious devastation that slavery had on African American lives has never been officially recognized by the United States government. The bill does four things. It acknowledges the fundamental injustice and humanity of slavery. It establishes a commission to study slavery, its subsequent racial and economic discrimination against freed slaves. It studies the impact of those forces on today's living. The commission would then make recommendations to Congress on appropriate remedies to redress the harm inflicted on African Americans, quote unquote African Americans. The commission established would also shed light on the capture, procurement of slaves, the transport, sale of slaves, the treatment of slaves in the colonies and the United States. It would examine the extent to which federal and state governments in the United States supported the institution of slavery and examine federal and state laws that discrimination against freed African slaves from the end of the Civil War to the present. And it goes on. So definitely, I didn't even know this petition was here. I was looking for something else. I'm gonna put this in the box. Share it, sign it, pass it along. Learn more about the conversation. Maxim says, no way to discuss this without causing hurt feelings. No, there's no way discord or division. It's going to be, because it's right or wrong, just or unjust. It's going to have to be some real talk. And that's why I started off with the conversation of the young girl getting offended. And it's not only Europeans getting offended, it's also our people getting offended easily as well. So I say that, and I'm going to put this in the box and I'll share it. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and joining us. We'll come back again. I haven't started a narrative yet. I'm going to start a narrative soon. If you have any suggestions, let us know. We could put it in the box. I think I'm going to pick up on Olado Equiano. I have that narrative. I have to just see if it is on the document, the site that we usually use, so that everybody can follow along. So with that said, my name is Amuna Yesfael. This has been Solonomics 101. Look for all information that we shared. Okay, my daughter wants you to see. If you have young children, although you might have to read it with them, this is a good book for young children. We touched on it earlier in the year. It's called Growing Up in Slavery. It actually takes, I think it's 10 narratives from, I think it's 10, from autobiographies that were written, slave narratives, and they just cover the childhood portion. So a lot of the slave narratives go into their childhood, what they experienced in childhood, and this is a good book for a young child, so that they can learn. So you won't be like the elder in the classroom upset with the lady. The child can know for herself that this is what's going on. Growing Up in Slavery, among other things, written by, or it's edited by Yuval Taylor. So definitely check it out. So once again, thank you for tuning in. Everybody have a blessed day, and let's continue to have the conversation. Let's not just wait till things like this pop up to have a conversation. Let's just continue to have a conversation, continue to heal, continue to grow, and share it. Share. If you can't do anything with the information, at least share the information. So with that said, everybody have a blessed day.